I think this is a really good example of also laying out a framework for those of us that are trying to make that jump from, or that change, or that evolution from just simple rules-based to subjective.
Before we get rolling here, just a reminder to please like and share our videos. Your support helps us to continue to bring you the wonderful content that we share with you each and every week.
And I think this
Mm-hmm.
is a good framework for stepping into that, because, if you go from you've been trading M3 4U, just
Right.
totally
Layer 0
rules.
to layer 4, right?
Right, right. And
Yeah.
I mean, I was just having a coaching session the other day, and sometimes, if you've been subjective trading for a while, like you and I have been, you sort of forget that there can be steps, just like when you were a martial arts instructor, you started out with basic forms that you're teaching people. You're not teaching white belts, which is the beginner level, sort of brown belt and black belt maneuvers, even though that's what you're probably more intimately familiar with at that
Mm.
time. So we tend to forget. So I have to remind myself, even for me, I followed a sort of a simple process. Like, I'm going to allow myself a certain amount of subjectivity for this next cycle. And then the following cycle, I might add another level of subjectivity, because if you just go from rules based to just wide open layer 4, you're going to really fall into some mental challenges, and your confidence can be really shot. And so I think this is, sort of dual purpose. What you're doing here is, is laying out for layers of subjectivity, could also be used as a framework for how to work yourself up into being a full subjective trader.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And that's what I would suggest for other people too, is just start making these minor delta modifications and
Yeah,
maybe make minor delays and adjustments sometimes, or maybe minorly front jump an adjustment, but nothing serious, right? Just till
exactly.
you kind of get your footwork in. And then as you get better and better, you can just start adding more and more things. Layer 0 would be fully non-subjective. I have this M3.4U. I follow the rules. I don't look at charting. I don't do anything. I enter on the date. I exit on the right date, right? There's no changes. Layer 1 is when we start to make delta modifications, and those delta modifications could be to varying degrees with your entries, your exits, and your adjustments. So for example, maybe I'm a little bit bearish, and if I enter a standard M3.4U by the guidelines, I'm positive, you know, 3/4 of my maximum positive limit. Well, if I'm thinking the market's likely to go down, then I might say, oh, well, maybe I'll enter it at my maximum negative limit. Maybe I'll exit minus 1.5 instead of the positive 3, right? And you can do that on your entries. You can do that. I guess you wouldn't make a delta modification for your exit, but you can do that on your adjustments as well. And that delta modification can be extreme or it can be mild, right? In other words, hey, I'm outside the long strike. I have a delta modification of 0, but the market's in a place where it's probably not going to come down. I can either leave it alone, or I can make an adjustment that's a little bit lighter than normal, so that to account for the fact that we're more likely to go down than up. We have timing modifications to varying degrees, right? So we can alter our entry date timing. It's like I don't have to enter 56 days to expiration. If I see a good opportunity for entry, and that could be, say the market's been down a lot, it's nearest, and it's near a support point, and pricing's really crushed down good, and you believe that you're going to get some sort of an up move, and you're 49 days to expiration. It's like, oh, well, this is a good opportunity. I'm just going to get in it, right? I'm not going to wait till 56, right? So that's like a timing modification, or maybe you really don't like the date on entry. Maybe there's something going on that you just don't want to enter it for, and you can wait a little bit longer or whatever, right? And you can also make timing modifications with adjustments. It's like, oh, well, I don't really have an adjustment until this point, but I'm going to do it now because I believe something's going to happen. And then also reason for exit timing changes. I'm not at a profit target. We don't have profit target in 3.4U, but I'm not at a max loss, but and I'm not expired, but I want to make an exit anyway, right? So that's another way you can modify or put a layer of subjectivity in. And then you have positional location modifications. This could be on entry, like instead of my short strike's 20 points under the money, maybe I want my long strike 20 points under the money on the top side. Maybe I want to be like a hammock trade, and I'm like actually above the money with my short strikes. Maybe I want to be like a John Lockhammett trade, want to be like above my lower long strike entry, right? So you can do those positional locational modifications. And that's going to be based off a combination of what your technicals are looking like and what the implied volatility changes in the near future are likely to be. But you can do that. And then when you would make adjustments, you have an option that's like if I'm below the short strikes, maybe I choose to roll the position back a little bit early, right? So that's a modification. Or maybe I choose to hold location and adjust my risk out of it some other way. And that's going to kind of depend on where you think the market's going to be maybe in 2 weeks rather than where it's going right now. So that's another type of modification. And then we have configuration and sizing modifications. I don't like the look of my 60-40 broken wing butterfly. I'm going to do a 50-30. Maybe I'm going to hold position and turn this into a vertical. Maybe I'm going to redo a reverse broken wing butterfly, right? So there's all these different things that we can do with configurations. Maybe I'm going to lower my size by making my wings smaller, or I'll lower my size by putting on fewer contracts or adding extra contracts, depending on what's going on in the market and what your opinions are. And we can do that, right? So we can do this, and we can change where our risk, what our up risk is versus our down risk, and the staying put risk, which is also a risk. And we can balance all that out and do that. And we can use all these layers together to create something. But yeah, layer one is a good place to start, which is why we have the Go membership, right? We just trade non-subjectively. And the problem is when you start adding layers in and you don't understand like what the base position does on its own, that's a problem, right? Because now you're adding layers when you don't understand what you're doing in the first place. So that's kind of what I want to look at. And what I did is I put together 4 or 5 examples. I'm not sure how many. We'll get through what we can, but it kind of introduces all of these. In other words, we're going to touch on all of these at one point or another. And we're going to take a look at some opinions that I have based on what's going on. You can see if you agree or disagree. But I just want to talk through this with Stephen to show you, a way I might trade this based on what I think and what actually happened and what my position is like, right? Because you've got a lot of considerations. You got your technical opinion, and then you have your position condition, and then you have these timing things going on. So there's just a lot of stuff going on, and you're not going to know what the market's going to do with 100% certainty. You're going to be wrong a lot of the times, or maybe you're not going to be wrong, but you're not right in the time frame you think you're going to be right. In other words, I might think, hey, the market's going down, and I might be right that the market goes down over the next 30 days, but before it gets there, it might push on my opinion a little bit, right? It might keep drifting up, and I have to be able to say, where does my opinion change and so forth, right? In other words, am I going to continue to hold my opinion? Am I going to change my opinion? And I have nice examples of that. So let's just jump into this.